Alright, welcome to the first episode of History of Shinobi Collection. In this series, we will talk about the characters that change how the game is played, the meta-breaking characters, as well as what was going on around that time. And in the first episode, we will talk about the very beginning of Shinobi Collection, when it first came out in 2015. 6 years ago, 2015. Shinobi Collection was the remake of the original game, which is just pretty much called the same thing, but the full name of the game that we play now, which is Naruto Shinobi Collection Shippurambu, is the remake of the web-based game. And in that game, the stickers that we put in our homepage, those are pretty much how the sprite is. But this game is also using some art from that game, and it still is, to be honest. And with that, in the very beginning of the game, no one really knew what they were doing, of course. The game consisted of running the run part for the monthly missions that we do now. That used to be a main part of the game because that's how we collect chakra in the very beginning. So we would have our 4 characters do the run part, which they used to be longer than before. We used to be able to switch in characters, and then we just attack, and every time we defeat a unit, we gain chakra. And that's how we set up every battle. And over time, it transitioned to what we have now, which is pretty much a turn-based RPG. And with that, what units were pretty good at the release. So, at the start, these are the units that we got. We're starting from all the way back, where we got 4 stars and 3 stars. And those really didn't get much use, other than if you didn't get 5 stars. Some of them were good, like a healer, for example. Sakura was someone that people used a lot because she can heal. And back then, healing is very important. Just because these fights, they last long. Like, the original content for Shinobi Collection is pretty much what we have now as the summit battles. They call it decisive battles before. It's a PvE event that will grant us free characters. So for example, one of those free characters that we can get is a Nakatsuki, which is a 4-star. This Itachi. So that's the one event we could do back in the past. They really stopped doing that about a couple years in, but they brought it back with the summit characters. So far we have 2 summits in the game, which is Tsunade and Jiraiya. So it's really nice to see Shinobi Collection going back to their roots. And with that, let's go over the characters that came out at the time. So the release characters, they were separated in typing, pretty much, not typing as in like what color they are, but typing what they did. For example, Sasuke does fire and lightning. So anytime there's a lightning banner up, Sasuke will usually be featured in that banner. And that's another thing that pretty much doesn't matter anymore. But in the past, it mattered a lot, where a character's typing is the most important thing, because different fights have different immunities depending on what it is. So you could be fighting, for example, a guy that's immune to every Sharingan, but is weak against like Taijutsu or something. Stuff like that is what the team building aspect of the game. But now that doesn't really matter, since color is the most important for type advantage, sadly. I wish they would go back where that's an importance, but I don't think that's gonna happen anytime soon. So with that, with enough delay, let's go over the characters. So the first character is Sasuke. And if you can see here, Sasuke can go up to 6-star. But in the past, 6 stars wasn't a thing. 6 stars was introduced during the 1-year anniversary. We will go over that more in the future episode, but for now, we're gonna go over the 5-star version of these characters. And another thing is, these 5-star characters, their level cap was only at 80. So the stats that they have here now is their level 100 stats, which wasn't a thing until 6-star as well. But with that, Sasuke. Sasuke was the DPS. He dealt fire damage and lightning damage, which means you have 2 ways of dealing damage. So if the enemy is immune to fire, you can always bring Sasuke because his Chidori is also a lightning type, which means that if you can't use your fire, you use your lightning, and if you can't use your lightning, you can use fire. So in a lot of content, Sasuke would be useful. 7% plus 770,000. That's pretty much the basic. So just to remind you guys also, the damage back then was not that high compared to what it is now. Nowadays, we'll be doing tens of millions of damage, 20 millions, even maybe 100 million if you're using an attack damage character. But back then, if a character deals like 5,000 damage, that's a lot of damage. And there's some characters who dealt over 10k damage, and those characters were insane. So 770 looks horrible now, but back then, those are basically normal numbers. So that's what Sasuke is, and his ability, his lead is HP plus 15% for black types. Not really used a lot. And then his fire skill damage, he is immune to it, and he also has 30% skill damage. There's another thing. You can use him if you're fighting someone like an Itachi during an Akatsuki fight, because Itachi will be using Fireball Jutsu and he'll be immune to it. Back then, all of these skill typing matters. Cast speed back then is also something that didn't matter because not a lot of people had cast speed buff. And also gears back then, no one really had unique gears. Unique gears didn't really come into fruition until later in the game. I want to say around KCM Naruto, and he will also be in a future episode, so stay tuned for that. And then his ability 2 is, he has a chance to dodge when his HP is below 30%. So he has some defensive skills, which is really nice for an ability back then. It just makes it so you don't get one shot if you don't have a healer. Sasuke, so if I were to tier this on how every character is back then, Sasuke would probably be in S tier. So really solid. And then we have Kakashi, who is the lightning DPS. He did 7% plus 870,000, so he would always do more damage than Sasuke. And then his buff, he has a 60% defense buff. Defense buff was very important back then, just to help prevent you from getting one shot. And then the other thing for this defense buff is this provides damage reductions against fire skill. This doesn't work with the Sasuke we just went over, since Sasuke is immune to fire. And this is his water wall, this is his Raikiri. His lead is better than Sasuke because it gave an attack buff of 20%. That matters a lot because when your attack stat is this low, 11,000, that 3% actually, 7% starts actually mattering. And then he has low chance to dodge kill just like Sasuke. And then lightning immune, so they're pretty much similar to Sasuke. And then lightning skill damage plus 20%. Sasuke is a little bit more, but Sasuke is only for fire. So this is your lightning DPS, 870. He was also really good for just doing damage. If you needed a DPS, he's a good choice. And then the first Akatsuki was Itachi. Itachi is a Sharingan user. He did single target damage, 7% plus 800, with a chance to stun. Really nice. One of the first debuffers in the game. Back then, status effect is like the main way to debuff. But like, look at where we are now in 2021. Status effect is still the best type of debuff in the game. And then his S2 is also Sharingan, which is he reduces 50% defense and speed to a target enemy. That's fairly solid. You could use that. Any of the 5 stars back then, if you pull any of them, it's not like you're just gonna be benched, because 5-star pull rate, really solid. And if you get one, most of the time they'll be usable. And then blue type attack plus 20% for his lead, so similar to Kakashi. And then chakra cost minus 12%. Chakra cost is 65, so minus 12% of that. Really nice. And then Sharingan type skill damage plus 20%. Still solid. So he's a nice Sharingan DPS. And if you can see there now, 3 of them pretty much do single target damage, but all very usable because they have very different types. And then we have Kisame. Kisame is at this point the highest attack, which is 1,007%. And then he has a buff that gives him an additional 100% attack with a really fast cast speed. And that's a water, so you have your water single target damage, very high attack. He's probably one of the best DPS at this time. And then water skill damage plus 10%. Not a lot of water units except for him. So if you have him as lead, he'll only be providing it for himself. But that's why Itachi is also blue. So you have Itachi as lead, which means now you're buffing both of them. And then immune to water damage, and then water skill damage plus 30%. And then he recovers 5% chakra, 5% HP and 10% chakra per turn. So Kisame was really good back then. One of the best single target DPS. And then we have Pain. Pain is a Rinnegan, and he is the first AoE unit in the game. So deal 3% plus 1000 AoE, higher single target than all of them, but lower percent scaling, which back then mattered a little bit. And alongside that, he moves them in the action bars, slightly shift them. So what we have now, if you compare this to modern standard, we have skip and cancel. But instead of fully skipping, sending them back to the beginning after taking a turn, or fully canceling, this one only shifts them a little bit. It's solid because no one has fast cast speed. Look at this cast speed. This cast speed is the slowest. So this is really good for moving them. But he wasn't used a lot just because this is very slow. No one has flash cast speed until a really long time, probably anniversary. But cast speed like this kind of stuff matters. Just slightly. Normal, usable, but like very slow like this, very hard. But it has to be like that because it's an AoE attack. It also moves people. This skill did too much back then. But then again, there's no PvP back then. These are all PvE. But with that, his skill 2 is also Rinnegan, and this is the first attack damage character in the game. He ignores 40% defense and deals 4 times his attack stat. And then he also slightly shifts them. So his attack stat is 16k now. So 4 times that will probably one-shot a lot of characters. Early stage, but then later stage they'll be defensive just like how it is now. His ability is Akatsuki attack and speed plus 20%. Best Akatsuki lead. Chakra cost minus 12%, similar to Itachi. Rinnegan skill damage plus 30%, very good. And then his ability 2. If his HP is above 80%, attack plus 50%, and then chakra cost minus 20%. Really, really solid for these two. His only issue is his very, very slow cast speed and very high chakra cost, which gets mitigated. And also, during this time, you could craft these ring gears, which really helps Akatsuki a lot. Most of these gears weren't out yet, but the ring gears were out early enough where it actually matters and makes Akatsuki a little bit stronger. Especially Pain, because he's the first Akatsuki to get an EX unit. And that's also in a future episode, so stay tuned for that, where we talk about the EX units. And after Pain, these are all in day 1. We get Naruto. You use the Wind Attacker, 7% plus 770. If you played the hard mode or story mode, you've used this Naruto quite a bit. But you most likely use the 6-star version of him, but this is only the 5-star, which is pretty basic. And then you get speed plus 60%. Not bad. Speed back then actually matters, unlike now. Black type attack plus 20%, very basic. When HP is below 30%, he buffs his attack and defense by 50%. Being under 30% is very risky, because you're prone to getting one shot for free. And you'll most likely have a healer, so this usually doesn't trigger ever. And then wind skill damage plus 20%. He is your wind skill type attack. Now Gaara. Oh, I forgot to say, like, if Sasuke is an S+, I want to move him down to A. Everyone else is probably in A also, because Gaara is here. Gaara is easily the best defender in the game. He's probably, like, comparing him to the tiers we have now, he'd probably SS or triple S, because he's an AoE attacker, similar to Pain, lower damage but normal cast speed, so very usable. He inflicts speed minus 50%. Speed actually matters back then, so reducing the enemy speed by 50 will make it so you attack more than the enemy. And then this skill is the reason why he is really, really strong. So to all party, he buffs their defense by 150%. That's the highest defense buff we get. I'm not sure if the next best defender, just Orochimaru, probably won't be in this episode. I'm not sure if it's higher than 150, but 150 is really strong, as well as reduce skill damage taken by a little bit. And then his lead, attack defense plus 20%, not really gonna use him as lead. And then he's immune to taijutsu, so anytime you're fighting against Guy, Lee, something like that, just immune. And then chakra cost minus 12% to help you with the 70, and 50 is already low, so that's very nice. He is a must-have in every team back then. We will be going over the best, so like, one thing while we talk about Gaara. After I talk about the units we will be talking about now, I will be using the best team at that in a fight. So just wait until the end of the videos for me to showcase those fights. And Gaara will 100% be in part of those. His only problem, he doesn't show it here, since he's level 100, but his base speed is under 100. That was his only negative. But other than that, what he gives is very, very strong. Then we have another Akatsuki. So Akatsuki pretty much got everyone in the very beginning. His Deidara, he is your secret attack type. Single target, 900, less than Kisame, but more than the average. He buffs his attack and then his skill damage also. This is one of those situations where he gets double attack buff, so this is increasing his damage quite a bit. And then his lead is secret type. This was pretty much never used because there's not a lot of secret units in the game. And then speed plus 30%. Speed back is always good. Immune to Genjutsu. This is not the Genjutsu skill, but this is the Genjutsu status effect. The game likes to separate that for some reason, but that's what it is. And then he has the skill damage buff that everyone else has, so very nice. And then after Deidara, we have Hidan. Hidan is your unique type damage dealer. Single target, 7% plus 1500, the highest one so far, with a chance to stun. And then after that, and he reduces damage also. So it's solid. At this point, we've gotten past the early beginning characters, and we start creeping up a little bit, just a little bit, not too much. And then with that, his S2 chance to reduce all enemies attack by 30%, as well as reducing his own defense by 70%. That's one thing back then that's really, really bad. Because if you reduce your defense by 70%, the enemy likes the basic attack. And when they basic attack, if you reduce your defense by 70%, there's a chance you will get one shot. So Hidan wasn't really strong. So then red type attack plus 20%. And then HP, I believe, which one is this? Recovery? HP something, 10%. And then for 5 turns, he buffs his defense by 60%. So pretty much you'll get a minus 10% during that first turn when you S2. And then Sakura is the free unit. You can tell with the cost. Was she free or limited? I believe she was a limited, I'm sorry. So she's an attack damage dealer, which is a weapon type. I don't think we've seen a weapon type so far. So that's also strong. Hidan was a unique type. Unique type becomes very strong later on. So 3.5 times attack. And then she's a 5-star healer, so she's already very good at that. Recovers a large amount of HP. So this type starts mattering. And then every character HP plus 10% for lead. Immune to paralysis, that will be very good in today's meta. So just shoutouts. And then defense plus 60% when HP is below 50%, but you'll be healing back to full anyway, so that's not really going to trigger. So Sakura is a really strong healer in the beginning, but not a lot of people summon for her. And then after that, we get Sasori. There's going to be a lot of units we're talking about in the very beginning, just because it's the very beginning of the game. But later on in the episode, we're probably going to start talking about only 4 units. But in the very beginning, it's just going to be a lot because there was a lot of options, so bear with me here. So with this Sasori, he is a magnet dealer, which is very unique. Not a lot. I don't think we even have that now. So that's very unique for him. This is single target, 7% plus 870. Ooh, sorry about that. With a chance to poison and reduce enemy speed by 30%. Fairly strong. Just decent, but it's magnet. That's what makes it good, because if they could have immunity to all the basic stuff, magnet just doesn't really get touched much, even today. Then you have the weapon type here, which is buffing everyone's defense and dodge by 50%. Dodging is also very strong because I don't know if you've noticed so far, no one has always hit. So everyone's skill can be dodge. And then he's the yellow attack buffer. Yellow is pretty strong, so not bad. And then he reduces weapons effectiveness by 50%. Magnetic skill damage was 30% when his HP is below 20%. Attack and defense was 50%. As what I said with Naruto before, that will never trigger, so don't worry about that. And now we have the second best character in the game, I want to say, during this part, which is Tsunade. Tsunade deals 5 times attack damage. Attack damage back then is really strong, which is a taijutsu, so she has an attack move. But then her healing, she is the best 5-star healer in the game at the time. Healer back then are really valuable, because the best healer you'll have is a Sakura that will probably get 1 shot. So she recovers. This is larger than before, so I want to say, if we go Dokkan terms, this is extreme healing, so bigger than the large that the other Sakura has, so it's just nice. He recovers 5% HP, 5% HP per turn to all character. This is HP. This type of lead was probably the best type, because it just makes it so everyone heals passively. So anytime you have someone like this will always be used, and just, yeah, this is just really good. And then after this, recover 10% chakra. We haven't seen someone that recovers more chakra, so this is solid. Especially since she's not really an attacker, she's a healer. So more chakra is always good. And then she reduces her chakra cost by 12%. Really strong as well. And with that, Orochimaru. This is not the Orochimaru I was talking about earlier. This is the debuffer Orochimaru. So she single targets, back to original, but summoning type. And they're just a hint also for the future episode. Keep watch of the summoning type nature, because that will become the best nature in the game. That skill 2 is a debuffer. Chance to reduce attack by 40% and speed by 60% to all enemies. And his abilities, his lead is attack plus 40% for 3 turns to all characters. That's the highest attack buff we have so far. So if you needed more damage, Orochimaru is not a bad lead. But his skill is pretty weaker compared to all the Akatsuki we've been going over, who has around 1,000 plus attack stats. But still, it's only 300. I can't even say 300 is a lot, because to be honest, it kind of is. It starts adding up. When fights are 20 minutes long, that extra 300 back then actually starts to matter. And this is better than all the other stat buffs that we've seen so far. All we've seen is HP below 20%, below 30%. This is HP above 80%. He gets attack and speed plus 50%. That's the highest we've seen so far. Really good. Summoning type skill damage plus 30%, also very good. And with that, we have the final legendary Sannin, but now I want to say the second best of them. He might be making the team that I'll be showing off later. To be honest, he probably will, because he is the best support in the game by this time. So also summoning, and he deals AoE 3% plus 600. Really good back then. And then attack, defense, and speed plus 40% to all allies. This is the first support we have in the game. Really strong back then. And then his lead is white type, HP plus 15%. HP below his abilities don't matter, because HP below 30%, HP below 20%. This one is defense plus 100%, really high, but then again, 30%, that's not happening. You might be dead by that time. And then skill damage reduced by half. He's really tanky at low HP, but like, you're low HP, doesn't matter what hits you, you're gonna die. So his ability is useless, but his S2 is one of the best in the game. Now to the Hyugos, we have Neji, 7% plus 1000 Byakugan, another unique type that we don't see often. And then speed minus 30%. This is really high for single target. And then attack plus 150% to himself, but he reduces his defense by 70%. Really high, but really bad. You can trade it off, but like at the same time, I don't know if it's worth it. Byakugan skill damage taken minus 50%. No one uses a lot of Byakugan. But attack, red type attack plus 20%. That's solid. His basic attack has always hits. yeah, basic attack always hits. And then Byakugan skill damage was 30%. Basic attack is okay. You can use basic attack because back then there's really nothing to do because you're not going to be using your skills every turn because of chakra problems. So that could be solid. HP percent, oh, when HP is below 40%, attack plus 50%, and then another Byakugan skill damage plus 20%, so 50% total. So this will be doing, yeah, 50% more damage every time. It's not bad. Really good single target damage. And then Hinata, a little bit lower, 7% plus 870. Defense plus 40%, but she protects all her parties. So what they call it in then that I really never use a lot is cover. So she will be covering party. But there will be a better unit to cover unit in the future that's an EX. That will be in the future talk. So stay tuned for that as well. She buffs yellow type defense by 20%. Basic attack always hits and can crit. When HP is below 20%, attack plus 20%, and defense plus 70%. Not really useful. This 20% is a lot. Just asking to die. And then these are the first, I guess, seasonal characters you can say, which is Wedding Kushina, who deals 2.5 times AoE, and then 3 times single target with a chance to charm. Really strong back then, but when she gets her 6th star in the future, it becomes a little bit stronger. But her 5-star is very solid. One of the really good. She's just a really good attacker. Both unique types, so unique types are really strong. And then red type attack and crit chance plus 10%. And then at the start of battles for 2 turns, she has attack plus 80%. So the first 2 turns of the fight, she will just be doing damage. So she's probably the strongest DPS at this point in the game. And then chance to dodge. So really strong. And then we have Mei, blue unit. AoE attack 3% plus 400, very low. And then single target attack 60% down. So her skills are very bad compared to everyone else we'll see. But the thing for her is that her cast speed is faster than a lot of people. So that's okay, I guess. And then attack and defense plus 10%. This is where we start getting dual leads, like dual stat leads. And then when her chakra is max, attack plus 50%. And then water and fire damage deals half to her. She's not really strong. Kushina's one of the best attackers, while Mei is just not really that good. And there's also 4 stars that came along with them, but I'm not gonna cover the 4 stars. Now, Kabuto and Asuma. These characters are rewards from decisive battles. Because if you can look, their cost is 24. 24 costs are free. So this is a free 5-star. You deal 7% plus 770 basic, but it's a healing type. No, we don't see healing attack moves really ever. This might be the only one. I can't even think of another one. So that's strong just because it's healing. And then attack plus 60%, and then crit chance up by 30%. This is one thing I didn't like about this when he came out. It released a Kabuto that doesn't heal. I didn't really like that. So I thought he was gonna be a healer for sure. And then blue type HP plus 15%. Medical damage plus 30%, so that S1 recovers 5% HP per turn. Then chance for skill damage to deal half. As a free unit, I guess he's okay. There's better units for sure, but he's free, so what can you really say? And we have Asuma, deal 3 times attack damage, which is a weapon skill. And then attack debuff minus 30% to all enemies. White type attack plus 20%. When HP is below 30%, attack plus 100%. Again, as what I said before, HP requirement is too low, doesn't matter. And then weapon skill damage is 30%. He's just a free unit. What can you really say about a free unit, right? And now, if you can, as you saw in the thumbnail, Minato was the best character in the game. He is the unit that you want to be re-rolling for. So if you played back then, you would have re-rolled for Minato 100%. He was just far and away better than everyone else in the game. So let's go over what he does, right? So this is the first time we get introduced for a new mechanic that I guess we have been using quite a bit because of a certain 90 cost god that got a legendary potential, which is also a Minato, version 1 Minato, Blue Minato. So this Minato introduced a mechanic called skill hits. So what differentiates skill hits from additional attacks? So if, let's say additional attacks, there's a unit that deals 1000 damage and 5 additional attacks. So that's 6000 damage total, right? But that 6000 damage will bypass multiple HP if they have revive. Back then, no one had revive, so we have something called skill hit. So it's 1000 plus 5 skill hits. As you can see in here, skill hits don't have a different scaling. So skill hits will always be the exact same amount as the normal attack hit. So this will be 350 times 5 instead of like 1000 plus 10 additional attacks that deals 1000 damage. So this will be doing 350. You multiply that by 5. And the thing with Minato is he hits random enemies for it. And characters that we will see in the future episodes, like Yellow EX Hashirama, units like that will be having a lot of skill hits, but also hits random enemies. So let's say you're fighting against 4 enemies, you'll be hitting them 5 times of force, but the hits can be like 1 in the front, 2 in the back, 0 to the third guy. But that's how they balance out damage when it's an AoE attack. But if against a single target, you'll be hitting all 5 hits on one target. This is how that is. Very strong for single target, okay in AoE. But what makes him really good, and why I was questioning if I was gonna use Jiraiya, his S2 is also a buff. A supporting buff as well as a healing buff. So now we have Tsunade's job. This is only a small amount, but small amount helps, especially if it supports. Also, while we're at it, if you see here, all allies attack and defense plus 40%. If you have Gaara's buff up first, and you use this buff, it will override Gaara's 150% defense buff and replace it with Minato's 40% buff. So you would have to take care of that. Make sure the highest buff you want is the one that you use last. So with that, his ability, his lead, attack, and speed plus 15% to Konoha. He is going to be your lead. The higher attack boost and speed boost is always nice. Which in the future, speed boost becomes the most important thing. And then chance to dodge skills, really solid. And then space-time skill damage was 30%. Really solid. Best character in the game for sure. And he gets his 6 star a little bit in the future, which makes him a little bit stronger. But at that time he got his 6 star, didn't really matter. But yeah, that should be... yeah, we'll end it there. That should be the first unit setup that we'll talk about. In the next episode, before we go to the gameplay, we will start talking about the very first EX. Alright, so I changed my mind. Instead of showing off the 4 units for this episode, I think it's better if I just show off the best character, which is Minato. The reason for that is that the other units are only 5 stars, and that's not really gonna work out with what contents we have right now. Unless I go and fight like a story mission that's gonna get one shot, there's really no point of me bringing those 5-star supports. So we'll just go over Minato. But before we show off Minato, I want to show something very special, and that is the summoning animation back then in 2015. And if you didn't know, this is what it looks like to summon a character back then. Instead of tapping, we get a scroll. So if you get a blue scroll, that means it's a 3-star. If you get a gold, it means it's a 4. And if it's a rainbow, it's a 5. There's also fake out, so if you get the other 2, there's a chance it might change into a rainbow. I kind of wish that's what happened here, but oh well. So with this, pretty much similar as before, you tap it, summoning jutsu, and then we'll see it. There's 10-10. And then Ino, these are all 4-star. Naruto, we already talked about him before, wind damage. Minato, 4 stars. 4 stars were not really used anymore. Zabuza, shout out to him in Shinobi Tactics, one of the best 3-star in the game, as the exact same art. Gaara, I was just talking about you. Alright, Shikamaru, Sasuke, Guy, and then. Alright, so let's showcase this Minato off. And to start, I just have a friend Hashirama and Madara here because they're single target. So I want to showcase something a little bit later in this fight. So, let's go over what that blue triangle is that pretty sure most of you modern players have never seen before, is that that doesn't show up anymore. So what that means is this skill type nature, which is space-time, this means that the enemy I'm fighting resists this. So if they resist it, it will do 50% less damage. So with that, let's use this S2, which this is a 6-star form. I don't really find a 5-star version of him, and this is my own. So with this, he's a little bit buff, but that's okay, because I think his 5-star version will just struggle, and that's also why I'm not bringing the other units that I was talking about earlier. So with that, his S2 got additional buff in percentage, so instead of 40%, it's 60%. It also got a defense buff alongside it and an increased HP recovery. So let's use that. Let's just buff people up. And we're just gonna keep skipping with these two because they're not really star. So we'll use it S1. If you look in the bottom, that 8 hit means all 8 hits of this skill hit him, which makes sense. He's the only unit here. So we don't need to see that anymore. Let's go to the next phase where we see multiple enemies. This stage is probably the best stage to showcase old units because we'll be fighting multiple enemies as well as one enemy at the same time. And if you could see there the difference in damage between a 2021 unit and a 2015 unit. Hashidara just did 5 million damage for no reason, while this character is struggling to hit. But then again, this is a 6-year-old unit, so don't expect it to be really modernized. But with 8 enemies, let's use the S1 again. And in here, you can look at the bottom. There's different markers of hit counts. So not all 8 hits is going to hit one enemy this time. This time, it's spread it out to 4 different enemies. So like one is getting 3 hits, one's getting 2. Sometimes they might even get 0 hits, I believe. I think that's a possibility. Maybe it's even possible to hit all 8 hits against one enemy. But with that, let's just use it again. All with Hashirama and Madara. Let's kill this Kakashi that's type resistant. So, oh yeah, we have that one person that's doing all the protection. Whatever. We'll talk about him later on in the future, but it won't matter. So let's keep one alive here. So we're just gonna basic attack with that. Basic attack again. Maybe another time. Let's buff up here to refresh our buffs. There you go. Now it's a single target. This time this is type neutral, but we're gonna attack with a type neutral against this Kakashi, and that did 250 something damage. Not bad for his time of age, but it's definitely not good in modern time. But what can we say? These units really don't age well, but that's not the point. Back then, that kind of damage as a 5-star, I think he was doing around 10k, 15k, and 15k is like equivalent to doing 90k, like 90 million right now. So yeah, that is Minato, and with that, we'll see y'all in the next episode. Bye.